Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. We start this week with a Capricorn moon, and part of where we are in the lunar cycle is in this closing phase of the lunar cycle. So we're moving towards the dark time of the moon, and what will be ultimately the next new moon, which is the new moon in Pisces. Part of that balsamic phase, the closing phase, is around this energy of releasing or letting go, culmination. And while, that probably happens all the time, right? We take an in breath and there's an out breath. We start things and they naturally end, like we start the day and it naturally comes to an end. In this particular time, as we're moving towards eclipse season, there may be more noticeable endings in our life. And sometimes they might come, as a shock or as a surprise or with a certain level of disappointment or grief. I noticed for myself this week, I had a couple of endings, and a part of what I've been trying to hold in my mind as people unexpectedly said, "Hey, we're done doing this," and it had an impact on me and it had an impact on my family, or it had an impact on my trajectory of what I was planning in my mind and making plans and goals and dreams and visions. And then there is also just the reality of what is. And whenever we see closures or endings that are coming around eclipse cycles, it's because there's something, and in particular, not just eclipse cycles, but around any new lunar cycle, any new cycle beginning, right? Something has to end in order for something new to begin. It's a natural part of our evolutionary journey. We have to exhale before an inhale can happen. That's a simple one that happens all the time. It happens whether we're thinking about it or not. We consciously can bring our attention to the breath in our life, just the way we can intentionally think, oh, like I'm going to clear out a space, or I'm going to stop doing something that I've been doing for a while, or I'm going to make a change in my life. And in my own life, I've been facing the combination of grief around changes that are being made for me, and changes that I need to make, disillusionment also, while keeping this openness, optimism, faith, really, that every ending is a part of a beginning. And that if there's something in my life that I'm longing for, something that I'm calling for, something that I'm praying for, that whatever is ending right now must be a necessary change or a space to be made in order for the new to take place, in order for what's next to emerge. And that it's almost a necessary sacrifice that has to be made. Right. And we can see this Juno in Virgo, and she's in this process of reevaluation relative to our commitments. She's in a discernment process. And that, especially as it relates to our long-term commitments and the places where we want to put our energy and where we desire to really have commitment as a part of our life, we have to clear out the places where the agreements, the things that we're doing aren't necessarily fulfilling a deeper sense of health, well-being, they aren't meeting a place of deeper devotion within us. And so as we go through this week, in particular, the moon is going to be moving through a square to the nodal axis. Whenever this happens, this is activating that emotional body to resolve and evolve. The North Node, which is in Aries, traveling with Chiron, ruled by Mars, our desire, our will, the action that we need to take. And the South Node, which is in Libra, ruled by Venus, our values, the relationships, the communications that we need to have in order to do what? In order to evolve emotionally the ground of our life, in order to set the ground so that we are moving in the direction that we desire to evolve towards, right? We're moving evolutionarily with Venus and Mars, both in a new phase, both in the sign of Aquarius. Now, since their conjunction to Pluto and since their conjunction to one another, they haven't even made more than, 10, 15 degrees change. So we're still in a relatively new phase with Venus and Mars. But the new phase is this random space of emergent growth, opportunities, ideas, changes, right? And while it may seem that they're disparate parts of our lives, right? We can see how everything is interconnected. It doesn't matter whether it's your work life or your daily life or your romantic life or your creative life or your personal life or your private life, right? Everything is an extension of your life, of your consciousness. All the experiences that you have extend from the thoughts that you have about your life. If you see your life as a healing journey, as one where you're navigating, releasing past conditioning, past thoughts about yourself or about, past limitations, the wounds, the places where you still feel hurt, stuck, where old, young parts of you, this could be like 10-year-old parts or 14-year-old parts, 15-year. I've definitely felt my teenager parts very active this week. And what are they trying to do? What are they trying to protect or defend or activate in their rebellion, right? In their rebellion, think about the archetype of a rebellious teenager. What are they rebelling against? The status quo, mom and dad, authority figures, things that seem boring or are trying to hold them back from being authentically expressive of themselves. What do they know about themselves? Not very much. What are they trying to do in themselves? Discover who they are. How are they trying to do it? By not being who you are, who the authorities are, by not being what people think that they should be. That's exactly this kind of phase evolutionarily with Venus and Mars. How are we going to do relationship? Not the way that we think we should do it, not the way that other people do it, not the way that our parents did it. How are we going to do work and money and our financial responsibilities? Not the way that the world is doing it, right? How are we going to do raising our children? Not the way that it has been done, right? Not the way that we're being conditioned to do it. This is unschooling. This is, you know, um, romantic liberation through, core friendship, core community, core connections that say like these relationships don't have to match the normative ideology around how we're supposed to do a relationship. These relationships can be what they are because it feels important for us to not do what our parents did, what their parents did. You have to think about Pluto too from an evolutionary journey perspective. Pluto is a 248-year cycle. 248 years, you're hearkening back to the ancestors. If we could go back, years. We'll just take it. We'll take the calendar back 248 years. Um, Oh, that's 100 years into the future. Let's go back 248 years. Okay. So, what are we at? Yeah. So, late 1700s, late 1800s. Here's our new moon, when Pluto was in early Aquarius in 1780, right? This is the week ahead. You're getting a real week ahead. This is the real week ahead. So, you know, what was happening during this time, right? From an evolutionary cycle perspective, this was a time of the American French Revolution. This was a time of great economic upheaval, great change as a nation, the United States, right? The Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. So this hadn't even been going on for that long that the United States had declared itself an independent nation. Let me just go back to regular years. Right? In the time of the early Pluto and Aquarius, right? And the nodes would have been square to where the nodes are at this point. So we can look back historically speaking to what was happening then, and our ancestors who would have been living then, what they would have been struggling with, what they would have been liberating from, right? And here we are 248 years later. We are struggling with and liberating from certain similar archetypal things. Well, in a more, of course, modern sense, right? We still have political change that's happening and especially in the United States. This is a year of an important political, I would call it a revolution for sure. It's definitely, not going to match what anyone thinks is going to happen. I think there will be plenty of astrologers having panels about November of 2024 and the election and things like that. And we actually have in California the midterm elections coming up tomorrow. So I say all of this because this square to the nodal axis of the moon, it's activating something that we're working out in these coming days, some part of our life journey that, whatever is unresolved in our emotional body, and for your own life, what you're working on in your relationships, what you feel challenged by in your work, what you're working on in your family, what you're working on as a part of your own creative actualization, your own core purpose, what you're struggling with in your health, what you're trying to establish in your own routines of well-being, right? If we think about what the natal chart represents, right? It represents the life, the totality of the life of the individual. This is about you, right? This is your life. And each one of the houses on the wheel of the natal chart, if we were talking about your natal chart, right? Each one of these houses is a domain of life. And each of those domains of life, so the first house is your physical body, the second house being your self-worth and self-value, the third house, your local neighborhood, your siblings, communication, short distance travel, the fourth house, your home, your family, foundations, the fifth house, children, creative purposes, romance, right? The sixth house, your daily life, your habits, and your health and well-being. The seventh house, relationship. Astrology Hub did a whole series on the houses, interviewing different astrologers, and I did the seventh house. It's one of my most frequently watched podcasts on the Astrology Hub network. I can put a link to that playlist in this video description. You can watch all of them. The eighth house, intimacy, inheritance, death, taxes, right? The ninth house, higher studies, long distance travel, higher learning. The 10th house, our career, our status, our purpose in the world, the work that we do, what's visible work, right? The fourth house, I would say, is like that invisible work. It's what we do at home. It's the more private life. This is the more public life. The 11th house, the groups of people, our friends, and, you know, our hopes and dreams, our wishes for the future. And the 12th house is our unconscious, or what is not necessarily seen by the world. It's the Pisces house in the natural zodiac, and it's really it's our place of devotion, right? Our place of when we say go inside and right and do the inner work, to go on retreat, that is a 12th house thing. These are the things that we are working with, right? These are all the different domains of our life, and as we're working with strong energy, where a dominant part of astrologically, the transits, where a dominant part of the work is in one particular or several areas of the life, right? We're going to see strong energy and emphasis, right? In this chart here, the strong energy is all in the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th houses, right? This is our coming out into relationship, and through relationship, coming out into the world, growing spiritually, growing in our career and our purpose. If this were in the bottom half of the chart, this might be more about growing personally, growing in our inner work, in our personal development, in our family. And here we see how the nodes of the moon, the north node here is in the 10th house, and the south node here is in the 4th house, right? This is the crisis between the way we want to grow in the world, how we want to extend ourselves outwardly, and what we need to do in our daily lives in order to anchor a basic foundation so that we can also tend to the relationships in our home and our family, right? In my own family, our childcare situation has changed and is changing, and there's been a lot of illness and sickness and amongst our children and our family, and those things have affected the flow of our work and our daily life. And this strong energy, Mars energy, to create something new, to be out there in the world, is at odds with the emotional energy, which is saying, wow, we have to tend to relationship. We have to tend to our health. We have to tend to our well-being. We have to tend to the family, to the home, to the children. And there's a crisis because something has to change, right? Whenever we hit these crisis points in our life, and then as the moon moves the next couple of days through the sign of Aquarius, right, it's bringing fresh energy in this culmination to say, okay, what's done is done. Where do we need to reevaluate in community, in our ways of working together? How do we need to work together differently? What do we need to begin thinking differently about in our lives so that we can have a new beginning? And that new beginning is coming in the Pisces house. So in your natural, in your natal chart astrology, you would be looking to see, like, what is the Pisces house? And where is this new moon happening? Because this is a new moon that is, it's a new moon that is the beginning of core process of healing, a core and fundamental process of healing where we have had pain and suffering in our lives, where we've had struggle, where we felt disconnected from our divine connection, where we've been ill, or where we've been, you know, struggling with our own well-being. And the moon, as it closes in this cycle, is going to make a conjunction to Hygeia right as this new moon happens. Hygeia is the goddess of health and well-being, health and healing. So to me, this is pointing to a larger theme that Hygeia has been traveling with Saturn. And my Goddess Within class series begins this Friday. We're going to be starting with the goddess Hygeia. And a part of beginning with her, is because this archetype of healing is beginning also with this relationship to Neptune. We have Saturn, Sun, Moon, Hygeia, Neptune, and Mercury all in the sign of Pisces. And if we think of Pisces as the 12th house or the last sign of the zodiac, really, there's this very strong energy of going all the way to the end of something, some journey that we've been on relative to our own health and well-being, some place or cycle of pain or uncertainty. And for me, this has been a big piece around my own faith and centering my life in my own faith, my relationship to Jesus. I've been spending a lot of time every single day reading the scriptures, in particular, reading the scriptures in Matthew, where Jesus is telling stories, reading and preparing. And this time in the liturgical calendar is the time of Lent. This is like this is the last times before Jesus's death and then his resurrection, before Easter Sunday, which is at the end of March. It's a big time of ending. We also, from an astrological perspective, it is also a big time of ending as well, because it's Pisces season marks the end of a particular season, a transition season into spring. It has that same quality of death and rebirth that Jesus's resurrection story has. For us on a physical earthly, realm, the season of spring is happening. There's so much wintering that's coming to an end. And naturally, we're going to start to feel emergence inside of us, desires to be outside. But this Pisces season tends to be the more wet. It's like it's been intermittently rainy here and then sunny and then rainy and then sunny. So there's this like very transitional quality of, am I going to go outside? Is it going to be rainy again? Is it going to be sunny again? Are we yet in the new thing that wants to emerge in our life, right? Venus and Mars in this new phase, is it? But we're not settled. And with Uranus making a square to Mars in this week, Venus beyond her square to Uranus, the energetics of uncertainty and of change and of loss and of grief and of renewal and of rebirth are so full. They're pushing us into an evolutionary stage where we can't quite see who we are, what we are, where we're going, but we can feel that things want to change. We can feel that uncertainty is really the gateway. It's sort of the portal through which we get to change, because our certainty I wake up in the morning and I know what I'm going to do with my day, and today my day has changed so many times already. I'm doing this recording right now, not at a time that I expected to be doing it, but at an unexpected time that had completely changed, because everything in my life has changed from when I woke up this morning. That's a really important, to recognize and not be so fixed to our ideas. The more fixed we are to our ideas of how things are supposed to be or what we are, conditioned to do, the more difficult it is for us to be open to the divine intervention, which says, no, this is the way we are doing things. This is what is happening. This is how we are you know, right? It's like the reality of what we want things to be and how things are is often the greatest place of our suffering. And as we come to close this lunar cycle and we move into Sunday, which is the new moon, and then, and the moon will make its conjunction to Hygeia on Sunday. This is a beautiful time for rest and renewal. It's a deep, beautiful time for healing. I'll be doing a new moon ceremony for my students. So anyone who's in any of my classes, or if you're in an apprenticeship with me, or if you're, in my Growing Together group, we'll be coming together in the morning of this new moon to just pray and really to nourish ourselves together in community, but with this intention for healing and for forgiveness. And that, I think, it is the entry point for the remainder of this lunar cycle, which is going to initiate us into action. It's going to prepare us for the eclipses, which begin at the end of the month. I talked about this in my month ahead, which you can listen to the whole month ahead. I went quite a long way. And, then we have the first light of the new moon is in this Aries time, which will be ruled by Mars in Aquarius, square to Uranus, still in a light orb. Really, it's like a revolution of change that's coming from the uncertainty and this sort of dissolving nature of being willing to let ourselves be changed. And water is one of those things that is a changing force in the world. It changes the landscape. I watched this beautiful documentary that my friend created, Water is Love. And in the documentary, it talked about the natural water cycle, right? And how human beings, in their destructiveness, have destroyed that natural cycle. And because of that destruction, we've lost connection with this resource, which is one of the most powerful forces on the earth. Everything, literally, we could almost say water is God, because water is in everything and everything needs water in order to live. And we need water in order for the climate to be the way it is. And we need the climate in order to live. And so water being what it is fundamental to our incarnation here on this planet. And we have to take care of it and we have to tend to it. And it has a natural way of flowing. And it teaches us so much about how we need to be in relationship to the earth. Right. And so I learned so much, and I was so deeply inspired by this documentary film. And, but then we have to take action in our own lives in order to direct the flow of our energy, of our life force, of our attention, of our, and even facing the things that are happening with water can bring up so much grief, because then we can see all the ways in which human beings are living out of alignment with what is natural to us, but also what is going to be good for us, healing for us, right? We need healthy water in order to live and to survive. And so many human beings on this planet live without clean water or access to clean water, having to go very long ways in order to have access to water, right? So imagine whatever we're doing in our day is ultimately a part of the constellation of our own healing journey. And in this new moon time, we're recentering ourselves around our healing journey. So centering yourself in this new phase, what is this new phase calling you into action around? Where are you being asked to break away from things that have been known and familiar for something new to take shape in your life? And I just picked a card for our week ahead. This is from Megan Watterson's Divine Feminine Oracle. It's the Warrior Saint, and it says, I am a warrior of love. My devotion attracts resources and support. And I really do think this is, this is such a kin to the Pisces new moon, because this woman who was considered a great warrior saint. Um, it talks about devotion ground allows us to see just how many resources we have. And devotion elevates our perception so that the spiritual realm can infuse us with light and strength and energy. Devotion is the action that we feel compelled to take that demonstrates our commitment to love. Right? Devotion doesn't always look like doing the thing that we want to do or the thing that's easy to do. It often looks like doing the thing that is hard to do. It often looks like doing the thing that challenges our ego or our limited desires, but pushes us into relationship with what creator, what God, what source, what spirit. It's like, what would Jesus do? Often, the compassionate thing goes against what the world tells us to do, because the world judges, because the world pushes us to live in a certain way, which is actually not our natural way, which is actually not the way that our heart would want us to live, right? And even in relationship, sometimes the hardest relationships that we face can be the relationships that most point our soul towards devotion, towards a return to ourselves, for one, and towards a greater path of healing, two, not because the relationship is easy, but because the relationship calls us to a level of devotion that we wouldn't otherwise be able to access without the challenges in that relationship. So as we go through this week, from that square to the nodes to the moon moving in conjunction with the node, we can know that something is opening up in this week that is really calling our courage to make new choices, to harness our desire and our will, for a higher purpose. And right at the end of this time, Venus enters in the sign of Pisces, right? So she's entering into creative waters and waters of inspiration and waters of purpose, right? Everything in our life, we really are meaning-making creatures, right? We are seeking a higher purpose. And if our purpose is to love and be loved, then everything that we can be trying to do, whether it's refining our own skills or coming to know ourselves, whether it's cleaning our house or, how we're in relationship to the people in our lives, whether it's facing our depression or our sense of disconnection, our sense of loneliness and alienation, but using our energy to move us out of that stagnancy and into action, right? Because we can take action. We can. Even in uncertainty, we can take action. And in these new phase cycles, it's not action that we know has a concrete direction or purpose. But as long as it's action that's aligned with healing and that core healing of our purpose in the world, it's bound to be a good action. It's bound to be an action in the right direction. And as of course, as long as it's centered in love, it's bound to bring us a greater sense of fulfillment and meaning and purpose. So, my friends, I hope that you have a beautiful week ahead. It's not too late to register for the Goddess Within if you want to join me for that class series. I have options on that class for pay what you can if money is an obstacle for you. If you want to learn about the different goddesses, we will begin with Hygeia, the goddess of health and well-being, and then we'll move through the major goddesses over the next 6 months. So I look forward to exploring that. In that class container, we work with actual charts of the participants of the class. So you get a chance to actually really learn about your own chart and apply this information to your life and your life path. And as always, please let me know if there's something that touched you or something that you're working with in your own life, something that you're observing with this lunar cycle. I love hearing your comments and I love hearing what's on your heart. So thanks so much for joining me, and bye for now.